Patrick, such a pleasure to have you on the show. I know we're going to talk a lot about your startup, and I feel like there's a million questions I want to ask and learn from you on the show. Maybe to tee things off, we've obviously spoken a few times about the Maket and what you guys are building. Can you maybe just simply give us an overview of your startup, what you're trying to do?
Yeah. We really started the company Maket with the vision of being able to democratize architectural design and planning at large. So the way that I tell this story in the easiest fashion for people to understand is the same transformation that Canva brought to graphic design in 2013 through web-based design. We're doing the same thing with architecture in 2025. So allowing anybody to be able to take the architectural process within their own hands when it comes to residential design, whether that be for new home construction or renovation. So really mass democratization of the industry. That came a lot from my co-founder, who he's an architectural designer by trade. He's been in the industry for about 10 years. And he saw a lot of inefficiencies with the design process using CAD, those types of tools. And my background is in design, so really just want to see more beautiful architecture across the board. Yeah, that's the quick 2 minute intro is that, but we can dive deeper for sure.
Yeah, it looks like you've been practicing, obviously. Maybe give us a sense as what does the current process look like? I want to hire
Yeah.
an architect. They use,
Oh yeah.
AutoCAD. My sister's an architect.
Yeah.
Like, how much does it end up costing for the final design? Maybe as a rough starting point.
It's a really long and complicated process, especially depending on the type of projects that you want to do. When it comes to residential, if you're doing the a new construction process from idea all the way to building, we're talking about a multi-year process. The architectural process and the first part of that is really multiple months or can span into a year plus. A lot of it because of the legacy tools that exist, right? So architects, they've been dealing with CAD, Revit, Rhino, those types of toolings where they'll come into the software, they'll take customer requirements and constraints, draw up a plan, then export that plan via PDF, send it to the customer. The customer is going to say, no, I don't like that. They're going to redline it. There's going to be back and forth via email, sometimes some in-person decisions. And then once they get to a final plan that they like, then you have to do the 3D renderings of it. 3D renderings also take a long time because it consumes a lot of GPU and you need specialized software. So we get to a point usually, even for simple renovations or new builds, multiple weeks or sometimes months down the line, thousands of dollars spent. And the architect's a little bit frustrated because they can't take on more customers and they don't have a way to automate some of this work. And the customers that they serve are also frustrated because before they get to a decision point, they've spent a lot of time going back and forth, a lot of money on architectural fees, right? So we're looking to compress that timeline in a quick fashion. But we have a vision of being an end-to-end platform for home design and construction, right? Not only on the design side, we could go deeply into that a little bit further, but it starts with design and then accelerate the entire process when it comes to financing, city approval, collaboration with professionals, financing, etc. That's the where we're at currently in terms of a design software.
Yeah, interesting. And we're going to talk about the famous buzzword of AI and how you guys
Yeah.
pull it off.
Yeah.
So it's like to just maybe make it simple. So it's like it takes weeks, if not
Yeah.
more. It's a very analog process with a lot of back and forth over
A lot of
email
back
and
and forth. Yep.
conversations. And that ends up costing thousands, tens of thousands of
Thousands of
dollars.
dollars. Yeah, tens of thousands of dollars. Even for minor modifications. If you want to take an existing floor plan and make modifications to it, you have to contact an architect or multiple hundreds of dollars per hour that are working on your project. Usually they have a lot of backlog. It's really a long and complicated process. It's very expensive and everybody's just super frustrated at the end of it, right?
Yeah, and the reason is like there's no law that says like you have to have something approved by an architect. It's just because it's like the way we've always done it, the Lindy effect to a certain extent.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like I always say that our biggest competitor is the status quo. I've always gone to see an architect. I've always sketched via pen and paper and brought that to my architect. Now a lot of generative tools are really the unlock, right? So it's like before when you had to go see a graphic designer, you're like, hey, I want to do a pamphlet, a flyer, etc. You have to go see the graphic designer, explain what you want in your head. Graphic designer would take that back in Photoshop. I'm actually a classically trained graphic designer, so I've done this in the past. I would work on it, be able to then give it to a customer. And it was a lot of what does my customer have in his head and what am I trying to express using the classic tools. Because of the legacy systems that we have, it's a really long process. Depending on the complexity of the renovation or the new build, sometimes it does require architectural approval. That's why generative AI and what we're doing can't do 100% of the process yet, but I think eventually it will be quite automated. Yeah.
Yeah. So from what I understand of the model, you're not technically trying to disrupt architects. Like you're offering the architects themselves this like superpower to be able to like really accelerate the workflows. And then on the lower end, you're providing a consumer, a prosumer, let's say,
Yeah.
that's able to log into your platform and create designs much more
Yeah.
cheaply, almost like instantaneously, I want to say.
Yeah, it's the same analogy that I always bring back to Canva, right? graphic designers won't necessarily want to mention it, but some of them will use Canva to say, "Hey, I want to be able to get a quick design out to my customer," and it's really created a mass democratization. You do have architects, I think, that eventually will get on board and use it. The reality is that we've been a much more towards like mass democratization, the prosumer consumers that are using it, home builders using it with their customers as well, because the feature sets remain the same, interior designers, general contractors, etc. Just because architects, it's an industry that is slow moving. There's not a lot of necessarily money or revenue to be made within that segment currently, and they're used to mature technology in terms of a tooling that's pretty complicated, can do everything. The reality is that generative systems aren't at that point yet. So architects are a little bit tricky. Like you see some early adopters that are especially on the younger side that are using the platform. They like what we're bringing. Then you have architects that are a little bit older that are like, listen, I've just dealt with my legacy systems and I'm happy with what I have. So that's been one of the challenges that we've had so far within the
Interesting.
company for
Yeah.
sure. Yep.
Can you give us a sense of scale today, like where you guys are at, like users,
Yep.
traction?
Yeah, so we a little bit of background of how we've built the model. We started building out the model in end of 2021, and we can go into more detail on what that looked like. But we really had to build our model from scratch. It's not based on a large language model system or diffusion based model. It really needed to be specific to architecture. So we built that in the end of 2021 and into 2022. In the beginning of 2023, we launched the platform, our model that was integrated into a platform. And so far, we've grown from a handful of users. Now we're just over 670,000 users since launching 2 years ago, and a lot of that's been organic. So we were pre-ChatGPT, pre-stable diffusion, and we actually really benefited from the rising tide of generative AI that was lifting all of us and all of the boats. That's the attraction to date. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you tired of the GPT wrapper question? I imagine you get that quite a bit.
It's a valid question. And I think that the public sentiment is shifting towards you have to be a foundational model company to be able to have a moat. And we see right now the collapsing of cost when it comes to these foundational models, right? We can talk about it later, but DeepSeek and the progress that they've made with their models. We've gotten the question, and when I always answer a question, I'm like, it's not a large language model. It's not based on a diffusion based model. A lot of those companies exist. They can build off of existing technology and existing models, which is really beneficial for them because they're getting exponential output, right? It's like whenever a model gets better, then the software gets better exponentially. We have the advantage slash disadvantage of having to build the model ourselves, having to fine tune that, be able to put that into our existing platform. But then that comes with user expectations of large language models and diffusion based models, right? So there's a little bit of a balance to make there. But I think that wrapper based companies, I think, are actually going to succeed quite well in the future just because they're going to benefit from not having to build out their own models, right?
Yeah. It's actually been released on Twitter this past week. It was like, oh, actually, the ones with the moat were the wrapper company,
Exactly.
the ones that are
Yeah.
able to track users. And,
Yeah.
like, so I find, yeah, like, we could talk about how you built your model because I find it's interesting. You did it with Mila and you're like really from scratch,
Yeah.
built something really cool. But one quick point on this is what's that expression, right? So the predictions are hard, especially about the future. So it's like,
Yeah.
what do I know? But have a sense for if you're just building on top of the latest innovations and latest frontier model,
Yeah.
but you have that niche, right? As you're obviously building in a very specific domain, you take
Yeah.
advantage of the latest thing.
Yeah.
And then also you have the data advantage of collecting, you said
Yeah.
670,000 users so far. So it's hundreds of
Correct. Yeah.
thousands of data points that just
Yeah.
improve your model that
Yeah.
a Gemini, a Claude, a OpenAI don't
Yeah.
have. No one's
Yeah.
uploading their architectural plans in there.
Exactly, exactly. And they're going to continue towards a race of being towards AGI, like where it's very much like it's a horizontal play. They're not looking necessarily for verticalization. That's another segment of the conversation that we can go into because I have a lot of thoughts and opinions on that. But to your point, building out an architectural model, it needs to take into account a lot of things that were just like large language models weren't a fit for what we're trying to build. Same thing with diffusion image based models or video based models. Doesn't understand base architectural constraints. So like zoning codes, regulation codes, what a base architectural plan is, room circulation, adjacencies, sizing, etc. What makes an architectural plan an architectural plan? And then along with zoning code. So is it compliant? Does it respect setbacks? Does it respect that lot coverage? Does it respect eventually structural elements as well? So all of those needed to be taken into account within the model. So really what we're trying to do is take the architectural brain, take those constraints and those decisions that are made, and then infuse that within a model that's able to do that. But obviously there's a lot of research and development that has to be done to be able to get to that point. So yeah, that's how we built it so far. And we've been able to see a pretty impressive usage so far.
Yeah. And so how did you end up building it? Like you partnered with Mila, my understanding? Maybe give us a little
Yeah.
bit of the history.
Yeah, so we initially had a conversation with Mattamy Homes, which is the largest home builder in Canada, and it was through an accelerator that we did called Next AI. One of the innovation managers at Mattamy was our mentor, and he said, "Listen, I believe there's going to be a future for automated plan design, but keep in mind this is end of 2021, right? It was like when GPT-3 was available via an API and Jasper was using it. Like it was like generative AI. There's like a handful of people that were thinking about that globally." So we really had that vision since 2021 of how do we go from unstructured data and input to generating floor plans automatically. So for that, we had to accumulate a data set of 65,000 plans, bring that down to 20,000 plans, label those plans, and get to a point where we could train a model that could output architectural plans. But it went from an output that honestly looked like an abstract piece of art to really through the different versions that we did getting all the way to like V8, they could represent spatial representation, circulation, the adjacencies between the rooms were all accurate. But that took a lot of time in research and development. And a lot of that is due to collaboration with Mila, where we talk with university professors. We have Mark Belmar, that's one of our advisors to the company, who's an expert in reinforcement learning. So being able to go over concepts with him and testing out different types of models that we could bring within our existing model to be able to maximize performance. So that's how we built it. But it was sleepy days in generative AI for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to say it's the pre-chat GPT world. Remember then, where it's like,
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it was a different world for sure.
yeah, I want to say it came by and it went. Whereas I find people get really accustomed to these things. It's the famous Turing test has been passed with flying colors. Like you just speak the machine and you could think it's a person,
Oh
but
yeah.
it's that old Louis C.K. joke. I don't know if you remember. It's everything's amazing, but no one's happy. It's like
It's
we're
so
in a
bad.
plane in the sky, and
Is
so it's like
I always it's funny because my wife and I bring that back often. It's like the expectations. That's one of the major challenges within the company. Like my top thing that keeps me up at night and the major challenge is people's expectations went from they don't know that this exists and that they need this to it needs to work 100% of the time for any type of project. It can be as complicated as I want to build out a whole hospital plan and have it done from start to finish, right? So like we get a lot of those requests on platform as well. That's not only residential, but since it's organic, there's a lot of commercial and institutional projects that people want to do on the platform. So that is a frustrating aspect of it where it's yeah, people have these super high expectations of what can be done with say our generative model compared to what you can do with an LLM or a video based model. And people's bar is super high when they didn't even know that it existed
yeah,
two
100%.
3 years
And
ago.
I think
Right.
you mentioned this that paranoia of keeps you up at night. I think it's that notion of just relentlessly focusing on the customer
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
It's you can never go. It's never a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
It's never wasted time and effort to just continuously
Absolutely.
improve that customer journey. So what's next for Make It? Like maybe a broad question, but it's like financing. We could talk about Quebec tech. So
Yeah.
like curious as to like how you envision the next 12, 24 months.
Yeah, for us, it's really continuing to building out the platform and being able to add more capabilities into the platform. One of the things that we've made really clear that we want to be able to do, say before Series A round of financing, is being able to build out like an autonomous AI agent that's basically like an architect, right? So it understands what's happening on your screen. It's understanding the modifications that you're making to your plans. It's going to understand zoning codes as well. So it says, hey, you can do this or you can't do this. If you want to optimize your plans to how you want to do it. First, it's going to be through a text-based approach, maybe then a voice conversation, where the user is going to be able to make those changes based on the conversation that they're having with the AI agent. Then eventually being able to automate those through like a KUA model, where it's able to use your computer and your browser to be able to make those changes automatically. So really being able to get to a point of saying we're getting very far within the architectural process. So that's on the model side, and then being able on the platform side to have a lot more templating, community, and collaboration. It's really important for us as well because we have a big data flywheel and a lot of people are using the platform, but we want to start connecting those people within communities to say, hey, you're doing this in California. If I do this in Spain, what does that look like? What changes do I need to make to the plan to respect the zoning codes, et cetera, for it to become a lot more of a collaborative platform than more of a transactional platform when it comes to architectural design. So those are the major things that we want to do. And for that, we want to be able to finalize the raise that we're doing currently. So that's what that looks like.
Okay, very cool, very cool. Yeah, so you guys are currently raising, so yeah, best of luck. Hope you close. We're
Yeah.
talking about like offline. It's fuck. I wish we closed too, but it's a bit. We're still chugging along.
Yeah.
On that current, like maybe talk a little bit of the
Yeah.
fundraiser and for maybe founders that are listening. So it seems to be going on. We can share as much as you want, but what's been the thing that's worked the most in terms of attracting investor attention?
Yeah. I mean, it's There's no secret that like, and I think a lot of people say this, but it is like it's a grind. It really is a grind, and I think that the change in pace and speed from say raising in 2021 and 2022 compared to now, we you saw deals getting done really quickly, and I think that sometimes they do get done still quickly if you're part of YC or part of certain networks. But now the pace of deployment has really slowed down. LP capital is not as available. There hasn't been as many liquidity events. So you see a lot of that translating into VC funds, I think. So just being able to have relationships that you maintain over a long period, I'm talking like a year, 2 years, sometimes up to 3 years of building a connection with partners with funds and being able to maintain that connection so they can see you execute, I think is the most important part. And then honestly, I say find somebody who's convictional. I think that you see within a 5 minute conversation if a partner is convictional or a fund is convictional or not, and then you can lean into that, or you can decide to say they're not convictional and I don't think that even if I push forward it's going to make a deal happen. So it's just the simplest analogy is like dating. It's like you're going to date a lot, you're going to go on dates with a lot of people. You're going to get to second dates with some people. Some of them will ghost you. Some you're going to get to the altar with and it's not going to happen. And then eventually you're going to get married to, in dating it's one person, but in venture financing it's to multiple people. But that it really is a similar approach to that. And that's why communication is really important in setting expectations. But it's a grind,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah, no, I hear you, man. Yeah, it's all about people, right? Like I think that's really
Yeah.
good insight. Is the simplest level is just like building a relationship, trusting your gut. Like I've in my past, like I've done quite a few angel deals, and it's do you want to go with a beer with a person after work?
Yeah.
It's
A
like
hundred
because you
percent.
can get a little greedy with it's a great opportunity, etc. But maybe founding team not so sure, maybe
Yeah.
not feeling the same vibe. And no, if you want to feel that energy with that person, of course,
Yeah.
it depends on what you're going after. If they have to be building something you think
Yeah.
that's big for it to be a real opportunity, if they're like, yeah, we're building a cool restaurant or whatever, like maybe it's not a VC deal.
Yeah.
But in yeah, I think to your point of having conviction, having the right partners, and a lot of people will go throughout the process, which will be a little bit unfortunate. It's a little bit of the name of the game, like you said.
And one of the things I found really interesting as well is, and I mentioned him by name because he's been so much of a value add to the company and on the cap table. One of our first investors is Bruno Morenzi, who is the managing director of Techstars Montreal. He was convictional in the process of picking us in Techstars. And when we did our demo to him, we were showing like squares on a screen type of thing. Like we were really early, like pre-commercialization, but he saw the vision of what we had for the future and had lived the problem personally, and he really was interested in the space. And we've remained very close, like we speak almost on a daily basis. So having those people in your corner and really saying, hey, I want this person to be able to continue supporting us, I think is really important. And to your point, this may be a little bit of a hot take, and I don't know if you want to include this, but it might be a little bit of a hot take that founders and people are going to matter. They've mattered, but they're going to matter even more in an era that we're going where software development gets more and more commoditized. The cost to develop something and the speed to market is really exponentially increasing because of model performance that are better at reasoning. Kua models are able to control your browser and operators and things like that, where you can probably get through a roadmap that would have taken years to develop. Now it's going to be taking weeks or days to be able to get through, be able to create software that can generate interesting returns. I think then it's, am I convictional in the space and how big this vision is and in the founder, right? I think it's going to be less and less of, okay, can we get the right technical team around? It's more, are we dreaming big enough, and is this big enough of an opportunity to be able to go after? So I think that's really going to increase
Yeah, very
significantly.
interesting. Yeah, I don't think that's that controversial. I think it's
Yeah.
actually pretty seems pretty spot on that
Yeah.
the cost of developing software is dropping precipitously. And if anything, we can talk about the debate, the future of the engineer, the
Yeah.
developer. What happens when you drop the price of something? It like usually demand goes way up. So
100%.
to your point, it's a lot more people that will be trying to build software companies.
Yeah.
So then the actual key linchpin in all this is the person, or the team of people that are building
Yeah.
it is the right team, their founder dynamics amongst themselves. And yeah,
Yeah.
like you said, the people part becomes even more important.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the major focus as well is if the cost of software development gets cheaper and it gets more and more commoditized, I think it's about having a network as well and distribution that you can get to that software to people. So that's from a purely business standpoint. Then I think honestly from a founder standpoint, it's are these people curious and have enough ideas to be able to continue to push innovation forward? Because that's been one of the things that I've had a lot of frustration with in the past is I have a lot of ideas, but getting those into actual code and actual development of a product, I need my technical team around me. But more and more with like Lovable and Cursor and other of those platforms that are taking really just natural language input and be able to turn that into code, I think a lot of people with ideas that haven't been able to do it on the technical side are really going to be able to put those into motion and say, hey, I want the demo to do this right now. And then in not even a year, it's going to be a full-fledged application that works. So I think that like ideas and being curious is what's going to win. Honestly, like I don't think that it's anything else but that.
Yeah, great point. Maybe a good segue to talk about, you mentioned about like surrounding the team with support. You guys were recently
Yep.
admitted into the Quebec Tech cohort.
Yep.
So like your time as a founder is precious. Like what are you looking to get out of it? Why did you accept?
Yeah. Yeah. So Quebec Tech, what we really like about the program, and we've done a fair amount of accelerators, right? So it's like what are we going to get out of Quebec Tech? For us, it's really support within commercialization. There's very much a goal of the Quebec government to say we're putting STADV and Quebec Tech in place to be able to have more commercialization in the United States, in Europe, in Asia, so we can really put ourselves on the map. And their support through that of saying we're going to support you financially and also resources to be able to export what you've built internationally and be able to grow that internationally for us is the big focus. So a big focus for us is the North American market, especially in the United States going into this year, be able to ramp up GTM to an increased level. And that's going to come with the help of Quebec Tech, right? They have delegates in the United States and Europe and Asia to be able to develop those markets. That's really for us the focus. Then they also have good connections when it comes to the Quebec government and what their strategic priorities are within the investment of technology and the advancement of technology and job creation here. So for us, it was strategic on both fronts, commercialization and also government relations here locally.
Yeah, very cool, man. Very cool. Yeah, I know Richard too, and I know it's still relatively fresh in terms of their
Yeah.
approach, but I think his heart is in the right place. And yeah,
Yep.
I'm cheering for them. I hope it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Um,
The missing part, and I can start again, but I don't know. You can either put this in or not. Depends if you what you want to do. But I think the missing part, or the part that I hope evolves, is the capital portion. And I've said this since the beginning. There's a real void that's been created within the local market with, say, Real Ventures that is active to a certain extent, but less than they used to be. Techstars that isn't there and present anymore. I think that there's a really big space for early stage capital to come and support these companies and say, even at the idea stage, how can we invest in these companies with the goal of being able to commercialize internationally? So I think that's the missing element to really being able to be competitive with other markets.
yeah, I'm gonna say I'm a little biased here, but yes, amen. So, but I do have a little
100%.
bit of a horse in the race here.
Yeah, yeah, but I think we're more naturally risk averse when it comes to being Canadian, and I think we're more conservative in the way of doing things. I think that there are some advantages to that because we don't rush into things and want to offend that many people. But the reality is, if we want to be a hub of AI companies here that are able, and then others that are able to commercialize and really become the next center where there's unicorns that are being built, there has to be early stage capital. And it's not Series A, Series B. Those companies are already mature. They have debt financing that they can do. They can be profitable. They can sell to a PE fund. There's a lot of different things they can do. It comes to really early stage financing to be able to get those products and off the ground, and not holding them specific to traditional SaaS metrics as well. Like even business models are changing a lot within AI companies and within software.
A few random thoughts. I'm gonna try and string together a question, but hear me out. You
Yeah.
mentioned a few things. The cost of software is going down, capital availability, but at the same time, it's like why dilute, right?
Yep.
As a founder, it's like why sell your part of your company to a stranger?
Absolutely.
How do you like? So I'm trying to tie this into ambition for Make It. Like, how do you think
Yep.
about like the long term goal
Yep.
for your company? You've been at it now for 5 years, so it's like dragging along. It's a big chunk of your career, and you only have X shots on goal to build
Yeah.
companies.
Yeah.
But yeah, curious to hear you about. I know it's like a broad kind of general
No,
question, but
no,
here's
it's
the
it's great. And I'll have a multi-pronged approach to this, and it might be a long answer. If I rant, cut me off. But I've always really had a vision of like how do we own the entire process from not only plan design, but all the way from plan design to collaboration to financing to be able to furnish your entire space, etc. So really being able to go and build an end-to-end platform where a homeowner can have all their elements centralized, I think has always been a vision of ours, and not only just sticking with architecture and architectural plans. So I really do envision a future where software development cost decreases exponentially, where models that have a computer access, OpenAI's operator is able to do tasks independently. So you can say, you put in a text prompt and you say, now that I've generated my plan, find me the cheapest, highest rated contractor within my area. Contact them, have them schedule an in-person meeting if they need to, submit this plan for city for approval, build me a bill of materials, and then put it in my cart, get it shipped on this date. And we're doing all of these things within minutes in not weeks or months. And then be the infrastructure that we would have had to build out behind those things, databases, user interfaces, flows, testing, all these different things we've had to do through traditional software that really would have taken years and really millions and millions of dollars to develop. That's going to be collapsed, right? For me, it's how do we get to a point of building software that really does a lot with a little development? And I think that's going to be through AI agents and really exponentially be able to bring that change. So that's on the software side. And then once we've figured it out on the software side, where anybody any day can say, hey, I want to renovate my kitchen and I generated my plan. I have 3 contractors and I know what the bids are. It's linked up with my bank account. So I know if I need to have a loan for this or not. And I have a bill of materials, and the materials are being shipped to me and they're arriving at this time. And maybe eventually I'll have somebody who can do it in a quick fashion. That's on the software side. But I think the next step after that is linking that into hardware. So not only saying I did it on the software side and I'm able to automate all of that process, but now I have an AI robot that's doing drywall, that's painting for me, that's actually doing the renovation or building the house, right? The future is going to look like drastically different. And we're going to be like, wow, the software 1.0 era where we had to build out the SaaS tool and the marketplaces and be able to commercialize that is going to look wildly outdated compared to what's coming. So yeah, that's how I see the future. And I really think that we can be a major part of that.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's like feeding the plan right into the robot that goes ahead in the.
In there's already companies that are doing text to CAD design, right? Where they're already doing 3D printing at small scale. So they put in a text prompt to create a model of a screwdriver. They 3D print the screwdriver and you can use it. Why wouldn't we be able to do that with houses? There's Icon that's working within that space. There's others that do 3D printing of houses, but they're still stuck with legacy tools on the design side, on the production side. So I really see this really being collapsed and being able to get to a point where it's you've done all of this stuff within minutes where I'm trying to renovate my kitchen right now. It's taking the process of taking the plan, building it, and then be able to see what's possible. I've already been able to accelerate a lot of that using our platform, be able to show that to my general contractor, be able to get to decision point in a quicker fashion. But eventually it's going to be fully automated. It's here are my inputs. Here's 5 different types of plans. Here's your Pinterest ideas are all applied to it. Now you have all of how much it's going to cost, and then you're able to basically just do the project within a few days. And now it's taking a lot of time. So it is going to take a shift in mentality though, when it comes to customers, when it comes to investors, when it comes to technology companies, because business models are tied back to the old way of doing things when it comes to SaaS, right? It's like they're not used to output based pricing or even new business models that can come from it.
Yeah, exciting. No, it's exciting times, right? When you
Yeah.
can rethink an entire business model and not get laughed at. Right? It's
Yeah.
very credible.
Yeah. 100%.
How do you think about the classic that trope of the exit question, right? Maybe I'll lead you to my thinking lately. As I find in
Yeah.
Canada, we often talk about that every single investor's like, okay, what's your exit plan? And it's like, why are you trying to sell the company? Like in the sense
Yeah.
of US company buys it. That means that we've sold the IP and everything to
Yep.
US entity. So I find maybe it's a question. I don't know if I don't want to say ambition, but it's like that ends up being the goal is to build something to sell. And I'm sure you're getting that now as you're going through your financing process. How do you think about that question?
It comes back to the question of the cost of software collapsing significantly. I really don't think that in the future it's going to be big companies that buy up software companies and integrate it into their software if everybody can create their own software and it becomes wildly commoditized, right? So they're either going to be buying network effects, so a huge database of users and customers that they can integrate into their existing offering or data points and whatnot. But I think the traditional of like, I build software and I sell it to a company, I think there's going to be less and less of that. And you actually already are starting to see that where it's either being snatched up by private equity funds that can really make it more effective and be able to make it more profitable and grow that and then be able to sell that to another private equity fund, for example, through a roll-up strategy. So we're probably going to see a little bit more of things like that. And then you're going to see companies take either that route or become really profitable and say, we've turned it into a quote unquote lifestyle business. Or for us, the third track is if we can automate all of this development and get to a point where it's doing every of these things on an end from an end-to-end perspective, where it's generating the plan, it's doing the bill of materials, it's calling the contractor for you, it's doing the financing, then and we have global representation, you're able to do that, then obviously for us, it's a public markets. It's an IPO, right? You look at the growth that Canva's had within their history. I see it as the same thing, but even bigger, right? If you own the homeowner and you're able to automate all the processes for the homeowner and everybody who interacts with that homeowner, you become $1 trillion company. And then after that, you can have the conversation of do you sell that to Amazon or you sell that to Google? But I really think that that's the mindset that people should be taking and not just like building a small SaaS company that you're going to sell to a company because it's not going to be the reality.
Yeah, no, very cool, man. Very cool.
Yeah.
Maybe one or two last questions. Like you mentioned your background in design.
Yeah.
How do you think about that intersection of machines and design? Like, well,
Yeah.
like I know the class things. Oh, the machines will never be able to be as creative as people, and it's actually it's starting to be proven differently.
Yeah.
How do you think about that in your space? Okay, you know what good design looks like,
Yeah.
and then how do you think about that for Make It?
I'm really excited because when it comes to good design, like there's something like when you're a graphic designer, sometimes you have a design eye or you don't. So you can be technically proficient but still not have a design eye. So there's always something that looks a little bit off, the color combination, the font selection, etc. I think it's the same thing for architects and architecture where you can be proficiently good at these tools, but you don't necessarily have the artist eye. So it'll functionally work, but it'll be like a matte black kitchen and it'll be like, yeah, it doesn't look, some people like matte black kitchens, but like it won't look good aesthetically. So I think that there's always going to be the human behind it that says, I now have the tools that are able to do it for me, but I know what looks good versus what doesn't look good. And I'm able to use my agency to be able to do that. And that's what I'm really excited about. Like I always say, why does architect, I told this as a joke to Steph, my co-founder, I said, Steph, why is all architecture ugly here? And you go to some place like Japan where everything is well thought out, everything is well optimized, they're thinking about design, they're actually being intentional about that process. There's no excuse to make architecture ugly. And I really hope that artificial intelligence is a catalyst behind it, where we can take design inspirations, style inspirations, and say, why can't we make beautiful design? I really think we'll be able to get to that point soon. And we don't have to trade off functionality for it, right? So that's my goal is like, how do we have that human agency and human creativity and then automate a lot of the tooling that goes behind
Yeah, Patrick, man, it's super interesting. Like I could poke you for hours, but obviously we can.
it.
And yeah, we definitely need to do a round two on this and see how you guys have you progressed. Maybe last
Absolutely.
question for the audience: if people want to learn more, connect, reach out, what's the best way?
Connect with me directly on LinkedIn, or you can also follow our company page. But yeah, connecting with me, send me a message on LinkedIn and would love to chat, grab a coffee if you're local and looking forward to connecting.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks. Appreciate it.